For those of you who maybe are here for the first time, you might not know that we got our funding for this pilot project through Workforce Solutions Rural Capital Area. What else can I say about Rebecca? She has mentored literally hundreds of programs. She is definitely active and involved in her community, as well as running her program.
I am a director here in San Antonio at Northwood Presbyterian Day School. I have ran centers in the San Antonio area as well as in Arkansas, where I lived before. And I've been privileged, I guess you might say, to have had the opportunity to open 2 centers. One center, the roof fell in actually while I was in Arkansas, and no one was hurt, but the center had to be closed down about 7 or 8 months. And so we had to go back through all of that licensing to get reopened. So I've been through this process 2 separate times. So first, and arguably the most important part of the process of opening your child care center is to develop your business plan. Typically, there are 2 types of operations. You'll have a center-based operation, or you would have a home-based operation. A business plan is made up of the following. You need to have your financial information, the location of your business. You would need to know how many employees you would be needing for that particular center or that home that whichever operation you decide, how many children that you would be caring for. You would have to have all your permits, all your paperwork. You would need to have worked on a marketing plan and then your success strategy. So each state will have different requirements for obtaining a permit to operate a child care center. I am located in Texas, so the information presented here tonight and the requirements are for Texas. But please follow all requirements for your state where your center operates, because each state, they will have different requirements that you will need to meet in order for you to operate a center in that state. So one of the first steps that you will need to take after you have chosen if you want to have a child care operation or a home-based operation, you're going to need to attend a pre-application class. That pre-application class will instruct you on everything that you need to know before you apply for your permit. This class will provide crucial knowledge for you that you may or may not be familiar with. And then second of all, this class is a requirement in the state of Texas for you to become a permit holder. And then once you've completed the class, you will be one step closer to running that child care center. I would say it would be best if you could attend one close to your city, because some cities and different counties and everything has different regulations that you would learn about in this class. The more information that you can learn about your city where your center is going to be located, the best, I think. If you're going to be just the owner, then you're going to need to secure a director, someone that you can get along with. If you're going to be just the owner and they're going to be the director, you want to have a person that you can have a good working relationship with. They need to be 21 years of age in order to be a director in Texas. They will need to pass a background check. They will need to hold the qualifications in order to be a director. Make sure that you really review that director that you've chosen and make sure that she does meet all those qualifications. Controlling persons, you're going to need to file application or a form for your controlling persons. And when I get new board members for my center, even today, they have to go through that process of having a background check for the controlling persons. And it's always a little chuckle because they're like, what are you saying, Miss Rebecca? Why do you think I'm a controlling person? That's not what that means. What it's talking about when it's talking about controlling person, it's those persons that will be in charge. They will be making decisions for your center. They will be setting standards. They will be setting the tuition costs. They will be helping to choose curriculum. They will be helping to write and go through the processes of developing your policies. And so those persons have a big responsibility in your center, and they will need to have a controlling person's background check done as well. Then the minimal standards. Sometimes people are like, oh, that minimal standards book, it is huge and it's a lot to learn. And it is. And you need to take that very serious. A long time ago, when I was very young and wasn't as old and gray headed as I am now, I used to put my binder by my bedside. Before I'd go to bed at night, I would read a chapter or two every night out of that minimal standard, because you need to know what is in that minimal standards book. You are responsible for those standards or those regulations, to maintain those and to make sure that you're providing good care for those children. The reason minimal standards are there, the regulations, it is to provide protection, is to provide health, is to provide the safety for the well-being of the children that are in your center. And then the liability insurance, you must obtain the proof of coverage before CCR will issue a permit. I have experienced some insurance issues. Just being a director over the years, things happen, and that liability insurance is your protection there that will cover you and your center in case of a major accident or injury with one of the children. So sometimes people look at licensing as being their enemy, or they look at the standards as being too complex. And sometimes they are, and sometimes licensing reps can be a little challenging. But if you know your licensing standards and you build a good rapport with your licensing rep, best practice is to get to know that licensing rep and develop a good relationship. Ask lots of questions of them. And if you don't understand something, ask questions. And they're human just like you are. And it's okay for you to say, can you explain that to me? Will you show that to me? Can we talk through that? And sometimes they're right and you've not seen it correct. And sometimes they've missed it, and it opens their eyes for you just asking for that clarification. So once you've completed your pre-application class and you've been authorized and you've been approved for your next step to register your business, you're going to be looking at a lot of forms. You will use these forms either before you get your permit or after you get your permit. And then you will use some of these forms many, many, many times over the course of being in child care. So Form 2910, that is actually the application for license or your certification to operate a child care facility. And that's how to get your application for licensure. Then 2949, that's your plan of operation. And that's going to explain, how you're going to run your operation. 2911 is your director designation. That's who is going to be designated and responsible for being the director of your center. 2960 or 2760, pardon me, is the controlling person form. And we talked about that earlier, and you will need to fill that out on anyone that would be helping to set those policies and procedures for your center. Then 2971 is your background check. You're going to be using that form many, many times. Any person that is going to be in the presence of the children will have to have that background check done. I would suggest best you pay for the background check fee, and then that way you are assured that it's been done, and then you're assured that this person or persons are able and qualified to be in your center to work. The Form 2974, that form is the request for risk evaluation. Childcare regulations is required to charge you a fee to process your application. They will also charge you a fee to conduct your background checks. And then every year, they will also have you to pay for a permit fee. The way that that works, once you've been issued your permit, then the calendar starts. And so 1 year from the time that you are issued your permit for operation, then you will pay a fee each year in order to keep your permit and keep your license to operate a child care center. It's very important that you are keeping up with things like your anniversary dates and permits. As the person in charge, you're going to be needing to keep abreast of those dates, anniversaries, times when permits come due, because you don't want those to lapse.
This is Shannon, and I actually am opening a preschool next month, and I just, Rebecca, submitted all of these. And it takes them a couple weeks to process, and it can take up to a month to get licensed. So just make sure you're filling all those out well in advance. You can always submit early.
So in Texas, you will register your childcare business as a legal business entity. And it is suggested that one register as a LLC. And LLC stands for Limited Liability Company. An LLC is a business structure that provides limited liability protection to its owners. So now step 4, we're going to talk about setting up our space. All child care licensing agencies have strict requirements on how much space you must have and how the space is used in your building. For instance, something that's a strict requirement is there needs to be one toilet for every 17 children who are 18 months and older, and it must be operable at all times. You never want to come up to opening day and you say, oh, well, that toilet's not quite working. Inside, you must have ample space for things such as cribs, space to do activities with the children, space for snack, space for meals, space for children not requiring cribs to nap. But you also have to have ample space for children's nap mats or their towels, whatever you choose for them to nap on. Most state agencies require at least 30 square feet of space per child. So safety for the children and adults are the top priority in a child care center. And they have to make sure that you are maintaining those regulations so that everyone can be kept safe. In case of a fire, you've got to be able to exit in a safe manner and have enough room. And that's just one of those things. Kitchens, bathrooms, storage rooms, hallways, offices will decrease your overall usable space. Usable space is the space safely utilized by the children. And the bigger the space in the building, the better if you want to have more children. So the 30 square foot requirement of usable space will make up the formula as to how many children you can care for and how many staff members will be needed to care for those children. For example, if your building has 3,000 square feet of usable space, you would be able to care for 100 children. You have to take out kitchens, bathroom, hallways, those kinds of things. Okay, so you must develop a sense of trustworthiness with these families in your community. These families will be trusting you with their most prized possession, their children. And then once a permit is granted, an open house is helpful in your community so that they can see firsthand what it is that you have to offer. You can have balloons out front, and you can have bounce houses, and you can have all hot dogs, all those kinds of things in order to set up those open house type events. But you want to make sure that you are having time to market that center so that when opening day comes, you are ready for the children and that you have children and you have families that are interested and that they want to attend your center. A licensing representative will then schedule a visit to meet with you, and usually your owner will be in that meeting as well, and that will be prior to you opening the doors. That meeting will last about 5 hours because they go through your building with a fine-tooth comb, and they inspect a lot of things during that 5 hours. And they're going to ask you questions as the director and owner. They're going to be seeing if you know some of the things that are required of you as the director and as the owner. They're going to be looking and they're going to be observing different things that are required, postings that are required for you to have up in the center. The licensing representative will tour the center. They will make sure that all those necessary requirements are in place before children are ever allowed to go into the center. This visit may be somewhat challenging for you, and it may be somewhat difficult for you, especially if it's the first time you've ever had this type of visit. The representative will ask you many questions. That's how they did it for me. They took out that licensing regulation manual, and we went through a lot of the pages of that. And she would point out and highlight things that were best practice and things that they wanted to stress the importance that you needed to make sure you were following those things. And then they would also be asking me some questions in that regulation book to see if I understood what the regulation was asking or requiring for me to do or for me not to do. And they wanted to make sure before that permit was granted that they knew that I knew what I was supposed to be doing or what I was not supposed to be doing. But it's also a good time for you to ask questions. You're going to be going through your operational paperwork. The center handbooks will be reviewed, your parent handbooks, your staff handbooks. All of those things will be reviewed during that visit. A statement of who's responsible for ensuring those minimal standards are met at all times. Your staff files will be reviewed to make sure that the requirements are being met. Your staff members, they must be at least 18 years old of age or older, hold a high school diploma or an equivalent, and be able to pass their background check. All staff members must be current in their CPR and first aid certification. The ratios will be discussed with you. How many teachers will be needed for the number of children in their classroom? They will also be evaluating the safety and the evacuation routes, and they will be discussing those with you, and they will be reviewing those to make sure that if an emergency happens, You can get out safely. Your environments, your equipment is set up in a safe way. And then they will review your lesson plans and your activities. They will go over your sanitation. And then once all permit requirements are met and the licensing representative have signed off on all your paperwork, the center will be granted a permit to operate a childcare business, and then you can open for business, but not until then. So I want to encourage you that if this is something that you're interested in, don't let things like licensing and insurance and those kind of things keep you from pursuing this, because it is one of the greatest occupations. It's the greatest job. It's the greatest of great. So thank you so much for having me tonight, and good luck and best wishes.